There are photographs sitting in archive folders right now, in the British Museum, in the Smithsonian, in private French collections that have never been displayed publicly. Not because they're damaged, not because they're historically insignificant, but because of what's in them. I'm not talking about paintings. I'm not talking about sketches or folklore illustrations. I'm talking about actual photographic prints taken between 1860 and 1890 on technology that forensic analysts have confirmed cannot produce composite images convincingly. Real photographs, real people. And in those photographs, standing next to ordinary men and women of completely normal height, are human beings that should not exist, not according to anything we've been taught, not according to any official record. And the moment I started asking why these images were filed away instead of studied, that's when I realized the photographs weren't the mystery, the silence around them was. I want to be clear about something before we go any further. I didn't start this looking for giants. I wasn't searching for conspiracy theories. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was doing something far more boring than that. I was researching architectural history. Specifically, why so many government buildings from the 1700s and 1800s have doorways, staircases, and corridors that are scaled completely wrong for normal human beings. That was it, a simple question with what should have been a simple answer. Historians will tell you it was about grandeur, about intimidation, about making the state feel powerful and the citizen feel small. And I accepted that, for a while. But then I started actually measuring, not estimating, measuring. Interior corridors in courthouses where no public ceremony ever took place, back hallways in administrative buildings where no one was meant to be impressed, working staircases, storage rooms, functional spaces, and the proportions were identical. 12-foot doors where no ceremony happens, risers so tall a normal person has to stretch just to climb comfortably. And the question that changed everything hit me not dramatically, but quietly. If this was built for intimidation, who exactly were they trying to intimidate, and who was doing the intimidating? That question led me to the photographs. The first one I found wasn't dramatic. It was a carte de visite, a small calling card photograph, extremely common in the 1860s. The format was used by ordinary people, merchants, families, government workers. Nothing unusual about the format, everything unusual about the subject. Standing in the center of the frame was a man, formally dressed, period-appropriate clothing, completely composed, and he was enormous. Not tall the way basketball players are tall, enormous the way a doorway is enormous when you're standing inside a dollhouse. The people around him, and there were 3 of them, came up to approximately his chest. I checked the format dimensions, I checked the grain consistency, I checked the shadow angles against the light source visible in the background. Everything matched. This was not a manipulated image. This was not a trick of perspective. This was a photograph of a man who stood somewhere between 8 and 10 feet tall, taken as casually as you would photograph anyone else. No caption explaining his size, no label marking him as unusual, just a man, photographed, filed away, and apparently forgotten on purpose. So I went looking for more, and I found them. Not 1 or 2, dozens. Carte de visite from the 1860s, cabinet cards from the 1870s, tin-type images from the 1880s, spread across collections in multiple countries. The British Museum has several, cataloged, archived, accessible if you know exactly what to request. The Smithsonian references individuals of unusual stature in passing documentation, then classifies them as medical anomalies without further investigation. French photographic collections contain similar images filed under miscellaneous subjects. Russian imperial records mention persons of extraordinary height serving in ceremonial and administrative roles, and every single institution follows the exact same pattern. Acknowledge, categorize, move on. No follow-up, no analysis. No asking why there were so many. No asking why they appeared in formal settings rather than circus advertisements. No asking why they were photographed surrounded by families instead of crowds of curious onlookers. Just file it away, mark it unverified, and trust that nobody will notice the pattern. I noticed the pattern. Because here's what nobody was connecting. The photographs and the buildings exist in the same historical period, and they match each other perfectly. I started cross-referencing. every photograph showing a giant individual standing in front of or inside a structure. I measured the architectural elements visible in the frame, door frame heights, staircase risers, window proportions. And then I went and measured the same elements in surviving buildings from the same era: government buildings, courthouses, administrative centers. The numbers aligned with disturbing consistency. A doorway that looks absurdly oversized for a normal human being looks perfectly proportioned when you place a 9-foot individual in the frame. A staircase that forces an average person to stretch uncomfortably becomes
Which raises the question I keep coming back to. If you wanted to erase a civilization, a real, functioning, geographically massive civilization, where would you start? You'd start with the most visible evidence, the evidence that walks around, the evidence that gets photographed, the evidence whose very physical existence proves that something different was happening, that a different type of human being was part of a different social structure that you are now claiming as your own. You rewrite the construction dates. You claim the buildings were built by people you can document, emperors, colonial administrators, local craftsmen, and you make the actual builders invisible. You remove the photographs from public display. You lose the skeletons during routine transfers. You redraw the maps, and you do it slowly enough, institutionally enough, that it never looks like erasure. It looks like scholarship. It looks like proper historical organization. It looks like responsible archiving. And anyone who points out the pattern gets the same response: interesting, but not significant. As if significance is something institutions get to decide for us. The chairs appeared in my research almost by accident. Estate auction catalogs, museum storage inventories, private collection listings, chairs with seat heights of 30 to 36 inches, nearly double the standard 18-inch height designed for normal human leg length. Backrests reaching 7 and 8 feet high, armrests positioned where they would be completely unreachable for an average person. And they weren't thrones. They weren't ceremonial display pieces designed to project power. They were dining chairs, desk chairs, everyday sitting furniture found in working spaces, administrative offices, courthouse waiting rooms, government building interiors. Auction houses list them as decorative Victorian design. Museums label them oversized display pieces. Nobody asks why someone in the 1800s would commission dozens of chairs they physically couldn't sit in. And then came the tools. Massive wrenches recovered from demolition sites across Europe and North America. 4, 5, sometimes 6 feet in length, not decorative.